In the tough times of the Great Depression, families had no choice but to stretch every dollar, finding creative ways to put food on the table. Today, I want to pay tribute to those parents who, despite the odds, poured everything they had into preparing warm, hearty meals for their children. Dandelion green salad. When grocery shopping wasn't an option, people often turned to their own backyards. Dandelion greens, which today we might consider a weed, were actually a rich source of vitamins and minerals for families during the Great Depression. As money grew tight and fresh produce became a luxury, resourceful families headed outside with baskets to gather dandelion greens for a free, nutritious salad. Just a sprinkle of salt and vinegar could transform these bitter greens into something delicious. Preparing a dandelion salad was simple but satisfying. Families would wash the greens thoroughly, chop them up, and toss them in a bowl with a bit of vinegar or whatever dressing was on hand. This weed salad packed a surprising amount of nutrients and was even considered a healthy addition to the family meal. And while it may not have been fancy, dandelion green salad was a symbol of resilience and resourcefulness during one of America's toughest times. Creamed peas on toast. Simple, quick, and filling. Creamed peas on toast became a go-to meal for families who wanted something comforting without draining the pantry. This dish was made from canned peas, a bit of butter, flour, and milk to create a creamy sauce that could be poured over slices of toast. The creamy peas turned humble toast into a satisfying meal. Families loved this dish because it was both affordable and easy to prepare. While it might not win any culinary awards, creamed peas on toast was the kind of comfort food that made people feel warm and full, even during the hardest of times. It became a staple for many households, especially when times were tough, offering a filling meal with ingredients that could be kept on hand for weeks. This dish, though simple, brought a sense of contentment at the dinner table, reminding families that sometimes the simplest meals are the ones that bring the most comfort. Mock chicken legs. When real chicken was too expensive, families got creative with mock chicken legs, a dish that used cheaper cuts of meat like pork or veal, shaped and cooked to resemble a chicken drumstick. The legs were breaded, fried, or baked, giving families a meal that felt like a special treat without breaking the bank. Mock chicken legs were a testament to the power of culinary illusion, letting families feel like they were eating something indulgent. They'd bread the meat, shape it into drumsticks, and fry or bake it until golden. For a moment, you could almost imagine it was a real chicken leg. This dish showed the ingenuity of families who were determined to put something special on the table, even when times were tough. Peanut butter soup. Peanut butter soup, believe it or not, is a perfect example of just how innovative people got. Meat was often too pricey, making protein sources hard to come by. But peanut butter stepped in as a budget-friendly alternative. Peanut butter, with its protein and hearty texture, made it the ideal base for a soup that could satisfy and nourish. A simple, protein-rich ingredient, peanut butter transformed into a creamy, comforting soup, filling enough to feed an entire family without costing a fortune. Making peanut butter soup was straightforward, using pantry staples like a dollop of peanut butter, some milk, and perhaps a pinch of salt. Some added a few leftover veggies, like onions, celery, or potatoes for extra nutrition. The result? A creamy, protein-packed soup that balanced a hint of sweetness with savory flavors. In hard times, this unique dish showed just how adaptable people had to be, and even though it might sound unusual today, peanut butter soup was a clever solution for families trying to make ends meet. Meatloaf. Meatloaf was a true hero in the kitchen, especially when you had to stretch a small amount of meat into a full meal. Ground beef was expensive and hard to come by, but meatloaf came to the rescue. The secret was adding fillers like breadcrumbs or oats to bulk it up. Mix it all together, and you've got a meal that can feed the whole family. Meatloaf was a blank canvas for creativity. You could toss in onions, ketchup, mustard, or anything you had around the house, and top it off with a classic ketchup glaze. It may have been simple, but it was incredibly satisfying. And the leftovers? Even better the next day, whether served as sandwiches or reheated for dinner. What made meatloaf even more appealing was how versatile it was. Families could stretch a pound of meat to make a couple of meals, and it was an easy dish to prepare in large batches. Some would even mix in vegetables like carrots or peas to sneak in extra nutrition. For families on a tight budget, meatloaf became a comforting, affordable option that could be easily adapted to whatever ingredients were on hand. It wasn't just a meal, it was a symbol of making the most out of what you had. Johnny Cakes. Cornmeal-based Johnny Cakes were a staple for families looking to stretch their budgets with affordable, filling options. Bread was either too expensive or too difficult to find, so Johnny Cakes, a simple combination of cornmeal, water, and a bit of salt, were the answer. These little golden cakes were easy to make and adaptable, becoming either a main course or a hearty side. Johnny Cakes were cooked on a griddle until golden and crispy. They could be served plain with a drizzle of syrup if you had it, or even topped with a sprinkle of sugar for a touch of sweetness. These cakes weren't just food, they were a taste of comfort and a reminder of simpler times. With their hearty texture and versatility, Johnny Cakes showed that even the simplest ingredients could create something memorable. Split pea soup with ham. When meat was scarce, even the humble ham bone became valuable. Split pea soup with ham was a staple that could feed a family for days. The ham bone simmered with split peas, infusing the soup with a smoky, savory flavor that was satisfying and comforting. This dish was all about making the most of every ingredient. The ham bone added richness to the soup, while the peas broke down into a creamy texture. Split pea soup with ham was a prime example of how families stretched their resources to create meals that felt hearty and fulfilling. The beauty of this soup was that it could be made in large batches, providing multiple meals for a family, making it an ideal choice when money was tight. It was also an incredibly versatile dish, with some families adding vegetables like carrots and celery to enhance the flavor and make it even more filling. Split pea soup with ham became a beloved go-to meal, turning leftover scraps into a comforting, soul-satisfying dish. Rice pudding. Leftover rice was never wasted during the Great Depression. Families found ways to turn even the simplest ingredients into something sweet and comforting, and rice pudding was a perfect example. With just a bit of milk, sugar, and maybe a dash of cinnamon, leftover rice transformed into a warm, creamy dessert. Rice pudding was a treat in an era when indulgences were rare. This simple dessert showed that even in tough times, families could find small ways to make life a little sweeter. A bowl of rice pudding was a reminder that no matter how challenging things got, a touch of comfort was always within reach. Vegetable pot pie. When fresh meat was out of reach, families leaned on vegetables to make meals, like vegetable pot pie. This meatless pie combined hearty vegetables like potatoes, carrots, peas, and onions in a flaky crust. Even without meat, this dish was warm, filling, and comforting, making it a cherished meal during the Great Depression. A vegetable pot pie was all about using whatever you had on hand. Some families added any canned goods they had, like beans or corn, to bulk up the pie. Despite its simplicity, the pot pie was a family favorite because it gave everyone the feeling of having something hearty and homemade. The dish also offered flexibility, with families adjusting the ingredients based on what was available or affordable at the time. Whether it was a cold winter evening or a busy day when money was tight, vegetable pot pie brought the comfort of a home-cooked meal to the table without the need for expensive ingredients. Beans and rice. Beans and rice have been a classic combination for centuries, but during the Great Depression, this humble meal became a lifesaver. Both beans and rice were affordable and could be made in large quantities to feed the whole family. Plus, the combination provided essential nutrients with protein from the beans and carbs from the rice. Families would throw in spices, herbs, or any leftover veggies to flavor the dish. Whether seasoned with a bit of garlic, onions, or even a splash of hot sauce, beans and rice could be adapted to fit any taste. This simple yet hearty dish could easily be stretched to feed a large family, making it an essential part of the Depression-era pantry. Beans and rice were more than just food. They were a symbol of resilience, feeding families while providing the comfort of a warm, home-cooked meal. The best part was that it was easy to make in bulk, allowing leftovers to be enjoyed the next day, making it not only a cheap meal, but a practical one too. Bread dumplings and tomato soup. Times were tough and nothing went to waste, especially not bread. Instead of throwing out stale loaves, families found a clever way to stretch meals by turning them into bread dumplings. All you had to do was take a few slices of day-old bread, add a little milk, and maybe an egg if you had one, and shape them into dumplings. Plop those into a pot of your regular tomato soup, and voila! You've turned a simple dish into something that feels like it's straight from a restaurant kitchen. The bread dumplings would soak up the rich tomato flavor, making every bite extra savory. Tomato soup was already a favorite because it was cheap and easy to make from canned tomatoes, and the bread dumplings added a nice twist. It was a satisfying, hearty meal that filled everyone up without breaking the bank. A true win-win. Navy bean soup. Navy bean soup was one of the ultimate lifesavers during tough times. Navy beans were affordable, packed with protein, and could fill you up for days. When combined with water and a bit of ham or bacon, they turned into a hearty soup that could feed a family on a budget. The longer it simmered, the better it tasted, and it made for great leftovers. With some bread or crackers on the side, navy bean soup was a dish that brought warmth and comfort during hard days. Onion soup. Onion soup is another classic that makes the most of humble ingredients. When you're working with a tight budget, onions are your best friend. They were affordable and widely available, making them the go-to vegetable during hard times. Combine a few onions with some broth, even if it's just water and a bouillon cube, and you'll have a soup that's both rich in flavor and light on your wallet. Caramelizing the onions might take some time, but it's worth it because those sweet golden onions transform the dish. Onion soup was a comfort meal that felt like a luxury, even though it only needed basic ingredients. No onion soup is complete without a slice of bread and a sprinkle of cheese on top. But even without the fancy finish, it remains a timeless favorite. Corned beef and potato hash. Canned corned beef and potatoes were affordable and filling, making corned beef hash a popular choice. Families would fry up potatoes with canned corned beef, creating a crispy, savory meal that was easy to make and comforting. Corned beef hash was the kind of dish that could be made with minimal ingredients, yet still felt like a treat. This meal was proof that even in difficult times, families could enjoy something hearty and flavorful. The dish was a one-pan wonder, making cleanup easy and giving families more time to enjoy their meal. The crispy edges of the potatoes combined with the rich, salty corned beef created a satisfying texture and flavor that made it a comfort food favorite. It was a versatile dish too, as some families would toss in leftover vegetables, adding a little extra nourishment to the meal. Corned beef and potato hash became a staple, offering a warm and filling option for busy families in tough economic times. Turnip and carrot hash. Not every meal sounds appetizing at first glance, but turnip and carrot hash is one of those dishes you might just have to try. When potatoes were in short supply, turnips became the go-to root vegetable. Simply chop up turnips and carrots, toss them in a pot with oil, and let them sizzle until they turn golden brown. The earthy flavors come together to create a hearty hash. Though not a standout dish for everyone, it's a great example of making do with what you have. For an added twist, you could crack an egg over the hash and turn it into a breakfast favorite. Boiled dinner with corned beef and cabbage. Boiled dinner was the ultimate meal for stretching a small amount of meat. A hunk of corned beef, a few potatoes, and some cabbage were all you needed to make a filling and satisfying meal. Everything goes into one pot, and after simmering for a while, you've got a delicious dinner with minimal effort. The leftovers were just as good, whether turned into sandwiches, hash, or even a new soup. It's the perfect reminder that with a little creativity, you can create a great meal without spending much. Potato soup. Potato soup is the perfect example of how a few simple ingredients can create a dish that feels indulgent. With just a handful of potatoes, some broth, and a little milk or cream, you can whip up a creamy soup that will make you feel like you're eating something fancy. Add some onions and carrots for extra flavor, and you've got a comforting bowl of goodness. Don't forget the toppings. Cheese, bacon bits, and green onions can elevate this dish. Potato soup is even better the next day when all the flavors have had a chance to meld together, making it an all-time favorite. Mac and cheese casserole. Mac and cheese casserole became a staple during tough times, and it's easy to see why. When boxed macaroni and cheese hit the scene, it was a game changer. It was cheap, quick, and tasted delicious. But when you turned it into a casserole, you elevated it to a whole new level. Just toss the mac and cheese with some breadcrumbs or cracker crumbs, bake it until golden and crispy, and you've got a meal that feels a little more special. If you had leftover ham or bacon, you could throw that in too, making it a true crowd pleaser. Scalloped potatoes. Scalloped potatoes were the perfect dish for times when you needed to impress guests without breaking the bank. The dish takes simple potatoes and transforms them into a rich, creamy masterpiece. A few ingredients, milk, butter, cheese, and of course, potatoes, are all you need. Slice the potatoes thinly, layer them in a baking dish, cover them with a creamy sauce, and bake until golden brown. Scalloped potatoes could easily be customized with extras like onions, ham, or bacon to make it even more indulgent. Despite its simplicity, it had a luxurious feel thanks to the creamy texture and golden crust that formed during baking. For families during the Great Depression, scalloped potatoes were an affordable yet comforting way to make a meal feel special, whether it was for a holiday dinner or a regular weeknight. The best part was that the dish could be easily doubled or tripled to serve a crowd without increasing the cost too much. Scalloped potatoes were a go-to comfort meal that could stretch your budget and still impress everyone at the table. Vegetable ragu. Ragu of vegetables is a French-inspired stew that allows you to get creative with whatever leftovers you have lying around. Whether it's a few carrots, a slightly overripe tomato, or a forgotten potato, just chop them up, throw them in a pot with some broth and herbs, and let them simmer into a bubbling stew. The beauty of ragu is its versatility. No two batches are ever the same. It's a great way to practice your cooking skills and feel like a gourmet chef, even when you're working with the most basic ingredients. Fried cornbread. Fried cornbread, or hoe cakes, was a southern staple that made every meal more enjoyable. Cornmeal, water, and maybe a little buttermilk, if you were lucky, were all you needed to make this crispy, golden treat. Simply fry them in a hot skillet, and you've got cornbread that's perfect for pairing with beans or soups. It was simple, budget-friendly, and could turn any meal into something special. Fried cornbread's crispy edges and golden perfection were what made it a beloved comfort food. Biscuits and gravy. Homemade biscuits with gravy were the perfect dish for any family on a budget. Flour, baking powder, milk, and a little butter came together to make fluffy biscuits that were ideal for soaking up rich, creamy gravy. The gravy, made from fat, flour, and milk or broth, turned these simple biscuits into a hearty meal that could be served for breakfast or dinner. Even without sausage or bacon, biscuits and gravy were a crowd-pleasing dish that reminded everyone that a little love and creativity could go a long way in the kitchen. Potato pancakes. Potato pancakes are a perfect example of turning a simple ingredient into something delicious. Potatoes were easy to grow and readily available during hard times, making them the star of many meals. With just a few potatoes, some flour, and an egg, you could make crispy, golden potato pancakes. They were budget-friendly, easy to prepare, and could be served at any meal of the day, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. What made potato pancakes especially popular was their versatility. You could serve them with a dollop of applesauce or sour cream for a touch of sweetness or tang, or enjoy them plain for a simple, satisfying snack. These little pancakes were a treat that satisfied even the pickiest eaters. Whether fried up in a skillet or baked in the oven, they were a warm, comforting food that filled bellies without costing much. And with just a few ingredients, potato pancakes proved that you didn't need expensive or fancy foods to make a meal that felt special. Egg drop soup. Egg drop soup is one of those dishes that's both simple and elegant. Made with just broth, eggs, and a little green onion, it was a go-to meal during tough times. The great thing about egg drop soup is how quickly it comes together, yet it still manages to be nutritious and comforting. It was perfect for families trying to make the most of what they had on hand. Whether served as a starter or a main dish with rice or vegetables, egg drop soup was a simple, affordable way to add something a little different to the dinner table. These dishes weren't just about stretching a dollar. They were about making the most of what you had and finding warmth in simple, homemade food. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. What's your favorite Depression-era dinner? Let us know, and thanks for watching.